Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Practical Pet Chat with Lorin and Rob and myself, Robert Zimro. Happy to have you here. We know you got a lot going on in your world. We've got something that we're hearing from several different folks. So, Lorin, I just thought let's kick this off with this topic. Um, and it might upset some of you, but hopefully it makes things easier in the long run. And that's why we're going to talk about it. And that is choosing the right pet, not just for today but for what's going on in your future. And I am a little bit stunned, taken aback. I've had several friends, family reach out over the last few weeks with these situations that I'm sure, weren't a part of that process of thinking, oh, I'm going to get this pet and bring them into my lives. I don't think anybody does it maliciously. I think they just forget to think about what's my life going to be like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now. And I don't want to discourage anybody because, obviously give that pet love and all the rest of that. But part of that is it's a responsibility. And you've got to have some foresight. Life happens, but there are things that you can predict. You're going to get older. You're going to have changes. There are lifestyle things that come into factor. I mean, there's just so much. So when folks come to you on this topic, how do you advise them?
Yeah, I'm all over that. And primarily because in the early days of us opening up the store, I was significantly younger. Um, we did a charity event and it was in a downtown area of a major city in California. And it was open grounds and everything, but they had tents and booths and it was all charity. It was a great event, but we were stunned at the sheer numbers of people who brought animals that they did not have under control, couldn't control physically. And here you're bringing animals into an environment with other animals, which is already difficult, right? It's already somewhat challenging. It's already stressful. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people, a lot of different animals. Uh, Animals are out of what's normal for them, their normal environment. And there's just a lot coming at them all at once. And we witnessed people whose dogs took off and dragged the owner behind them or yanked the leash right out of their hand to take off after someone else. And at that time, I think we had 4 dogs of the 12 that we ended up with. And I was always really cognizant of that when, like I had some clients who were in their 70s and 80s and they were not the healthiest as aren't in your 70s and 80s for the most part. Um, and their kids decided their grown kids decided after they lost their dog, had to put their dog down, decided to get these not steady on their feet, older people, a gorgeous golden retriever puppy,
Mm.
a puppy. And all I could see in my head was walkers going down, puppy getting caught under the feet, them not being able to get the puppy in. Just issue after issue. And they would bring the dog by the store. And it was really stressful for me because I was so worried about the dog and the people. And I just couldn't even imagine, why they thought this was a good idea. I mean, the macabre humor part of it is maybe the kids are trying to knock the parents off, to get the estate or something like that. But it's not funny and it's dangerous. And it's just fraught with issues. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. You have to look at, none of us has a crystal ball. We don't know that some life-changing event can happen, right? But you know that you hopefully are going to get older. And I don't care. 90% of people out there, let's be real here, unless you're doing something phenomenally focused to keep your health really up to speed, you're aging. You're aging physically, you're not as strong, you're tired more. Maybe you don't have the energy to attend to the needs of certain size animals and certain ages of animals, both young and old. And I think that you need to prepare accordingly for that. So yeah, it's a combination of issues. It's not only an age thing, but it's also a thing where, and I'll just use this as an example, and it's just something, it's an example. If you are vegan or vegetarian and you are absolutely, I don't care if it's philosophically or any other way, opposed to feeding a carnivore the diet that it needs. You don't want to handle it. You don't want it in the house. You don't want it on your counters. You don't want your animal consuming it. Please do not get a carnivore. Get a rabbit. Get something that is meant to eat vegetation,
Yeah.
so that the animal fits into your lifestyle and you don't have to make a change that you struggle with. Now I had a lot of vegan and vegetarian clients who were like, no, I get it. This is what this animal is supposed to eat. They are carnivore, and I don't have any problem feeding them appropriately. For me, I insist that I eat vegan or vegetarian, and I totally appreciate that.
Right.
But I see it all the time. I see it in groups. I see it in person. People talk to me about it all the time, and I really discourage. And also because from a longevity standpoint, if you can't adapt to the age, the size, the needs of an animal because they're so different from yours, then how long is the animal going to be in your household? Which isn't fair.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, and I think you brought up several great points in that whole process. To me too, it's, you look at, it's just so easy to look at your current situation. It is much more difficult, as you said, to project it out. Oh, I've got kids right now. It'd be so great. They learn so much. They have that camaraderie. They learn to care for another living being and prioritize them, which are all wonderful things. But then it's like, oh, wait, is this and I love that you brought up the carnivore versus, the herbivores. Um, because the birds, the tortoises, they live for a very long time.
Yes.
And that was something that we talked about when we got our herbivores of, hey, girls, mom and I hope to be here as long as they'll be here. But we got to know because this is a family commitment. And I think that's another interesting part of the dynamic as you're looking to add pets. You know, in that family environment, I like that you talked about, oh, someone else made the decision. And you and I have kind of had those conversations before of, you should not be making a decision for somebody else. I am not a proponent of gifting living beings. It's just
No.
not the right thing to do. Have the conversation, say, hey, I'd like to do this for you, but are you willing to do that? And I have a big family, and we've had those discussions where, one sibling thinks, oh, I'm going to get this for, and it's like, whoa, yeah, that's, you don't even know that that's what they want. They don't have, it's a great story. We've seen those videos. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you see those on, the different platforms?
Oh, they make
And
great
yeah,
videos.
they're
Period.
great.
Dot. End of
Yeah.
statement.
So I get the impulse, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I got to look at the costs. I got to look at the, current environment. I've got to look at what the needs are. Can I meet all of that? Not just today, but for the, duration. And I love that you brought up, as we get older, things change too. You know, um, you like to say that I like the real size dogs, and I do. But I will say, as I'm getting older and as I'm, starting to feel, the multiple knee surgeries and all that,
Yeah.
do question. as much as I love all the great parenting that we have in our family, would that be a proper choice for me, 5 years from now? I'm not so sure. Um, so those are the things that I just want to call out. And then the other thing too is, look at the breeds, and figure out what matches your personality, your lifestyle. I think that's another part that has kind of surprised me in some of the conversations I've been involved with most recently is I don't know how you thought that breed with all that they need, and that's in their DNA. That's
Right.
not something that you're going to, you know, take out of them. That's high energy, high impulse. That's what they are. So
Right.
you can't be frustrated by that. You can, but that wasn't them. That's a you issue. And the needs that they have, yes, they're going to age, but they don't, you know, that doesn't change as much as we feel it changes. And it
Hmm.
certainly doesn't change when we want it to change. And so, and I know a lot of our trainer friends out there are going, oh, well, we can work with it. I understand you can work with that, but isn't it better to, have that synergy so that you're nurturing instead of suppressing? And I think
Well,
that's where I come down on it.
well, we had to put that thought in, when the last of our original 12, who was 21 when she passed away, um, was when we lost her. We had to talk about that because we needed to look at how things were going to progress with us. I mean, we thought enough in advance to buy a single story house because
Love
you
that.
you, you
Yeah.
have joint issues in the future and those kinds of things. So you plan accordingly with that kind of thought process to think, okay, so let's get a single story house so we don't have to deal with that when the time comes. Same thing with animals. Our animals live a long time. Ours, we get animals that because of how we raise them, genetics aside, they live their maximum potential, which oftentimes is 16, 17, 18 to 21 years old. And so when we had to look at that, it's like, well, what could we, what's going to fit into the house? And I love all dogs, all of them. I want all of them. I want, Noah's Ark. I want two of everything. Um, but the reality is it's not going to fit. My husband wants a real dog. And I was like, that's great. He goes, well, I'll walk him. I'll, take care of him. But what happens if something happens to you? What happens if as we age, if something you can't walk in, you can't take that falls on me to do, maybe I can't do that. I don't have that crystal ball either. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10, 12 years for either of us. So I want an animal that fits us. And I've seen over the years people in the pet industry that have had big dogs, you see them downsizing.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, did you have that conversation? Did you think about that? I love that you did. But at some point they finally say, yeah, I had to think about the fact that I'm getting older. And I'm like, thank you for doing that. And it's the same thing. We had 12, I- 12 at the time when I had a pet store and a lifestyle that could accommodate that was one thing. 12 now is certifiable. It was borderline then. But it's like that would be insane to think that I could potentially care for 12, if I'm however old into
Yeah.
being,
Well, yeah, and I don't think it's an age thing either. I agree with you on that. I think it's what's your lifestyle? If you
right.
can afford to have help for that, I think one of the interesting things is, and this younger generation, I love you all. You just keep me constantly entertained. Um, we have not had this topic come up, but instead of getting children nannies, they're getting pet nannies that stop by. Hey, folks, we used to call those pet sitters, and oh, I'm going to drop by, take your dog for a walk. I'm going to make sure they're fed and all that. But now it's like, oh, I'm a pet nanny. I spend 3 hours at this client's house, 3 hours at that client's house, and I'm done for.
And let me applaud that you're
Yeah,
thinking about that.
I love it. That's what I say. I am entertained in a good way and a continuation of as we're talking about this, where are you putting your resources and whatnot. And so I think the other thing that I just kind of call out too is you you go through different things in life and you can adapt. We can all adapt. And as long as you've put in the thought, I feel you're just better prepared for that evolution that life brings you because none of us know. None of us know any of it. So certainly we're not trying to say, oh my gosh, you got to plan it out and it's going to be executed. That's not what life is. Life is always something different coming at you. But knowing the priorities, knowing the commitments, the things that have to be prioritized, that's the part that I think I'm trying to call out as I look and have these conversations with other folks. I'm saying, okay, you made the decision, you're here now. How do we handle it? How do we do this? Because you knew you were making a long-term commitment. You knew this was a living being, and nobody in the process has expressed, I regret this. I don't love them. That's never it. It's gotten so much harder. I'm not able to be what I was 5 years ago.
Right.
And then they start to go down that rabbit hole that you and I have talked about of not having grace for themselves. And I'm a horrible pet parent because I don't do, 7 walks a week anymore. I now do, 2 or 3 because I've got too much work. I've got this commitment or whatever it is. Or, hey, I've gotten older and the thought of a, 3 mile, walk is just not something that I'm down for anymore, yet it's something that that pet needs. Um, or the notion, allergies. We haven't even talked about allergies, and that's another one too, right? Because this one came up in the conversation where it's like, well, I really, have strong feelings for this other person that could be the perfect spouse, but they've got allergies to my particular pet. And I'm like, well,
Kick them to the curb, get a new one.
yeah,
Not
get a
pet,
new
person. Get a new person.
get a new person. But yeah, but it's just one of those where it's again, it's like, hey, you got to think about these things, right? Because those are gonna come up. And you can certainly, everybody knows I've shared this many times. I've got, some severe allergies in our family. It doesn't prevent us from still being great pet parents. It does prevent us from some of the choices I might otherwise make, but I can
Sure.
balance that. And I take that into consideration as we're going through our process. So I think that's something I love that you said too, that single story house, because that is something that is very interesting. I see more and more people seeing the importance and the beauty of it. I know I'm one of those people. I used to, the 2 story and the this and that. And I have a 2 story, but I'm like, man, I would just love a single story for so many reasons. Um, and so I think if I were to buy something, that's one of those things. It's not in my control necessarily, but it's a priority, right? It's not going to be the final decision maker, but if I'm in between two things, where I am at age wise, where I project, my health going, where I project my pets. I've talked about Belle has a vestibular issue. And Bella, there are times where I have to carry her down the stairs because she's having a rough day.
Right.
This is a 70-pound plus dog. Um, I can do that. My kids could do that, but it's not safe for them. So I'll always take that on. That's an ego thing. I get it. I'm the dad. I got to do these things. But I think about that when I think about having, oh gosh, if we got a Great Pyrenees, could I carry that dog downstairs? No, that it's just like even now where I'm at. So if I can't do it now, I'm not going to do it in the future. Now, if I had a single story, it changes the whole discussion
Mhm.
and thought process for me. So yeah, so there are many things, and I guess the reason I wanted to talk about it today was just because it's so heartbreaking, right? It's like, oh, with a little bit of forethought, we could have made life easier for you, the pet parent,
Right.
for the pets that you're parenting. And wow, I want to get that message out because that's that other thing too, right? If you just look at the arc of most folks' lives, you start, in a smaller place, apartment, you're, in a smaller, dwelling. You maybe upsize, you got the big backyard, all the rest of it. And then towards the end, you're like, hey, the back half, I'm gonna just downsize, I'm gonna simplify my life, I'm gonna Maria Kondo myself and minimalize. Well, that's great, but if I've got birds that, are constantly squawking, or I've got big dogs that need a yard to run in to get the zoomies out every afternoon, and I don't feel that my schedule or myself, lends towards walking, that's that part of the equation on the arc that you've got to start to build in. And I think we need to do that. But as I've always said, it's too easy to become a pet parent, where just all, and I'm guilty of it as well. You see that cuteness, you just, I can be the difference and all the rest. And it's like, oh, okay, now I'm here. I was that a snap decision? Was it, and I like one other thing that you brought up, and this is something I know it's not the main topic here today, um, but that loss after a pet. Everybody wants to fill the hole, whether it's, the person who lost their pet or well-meaning friends and family, and that is not the fit for everybody. And so really have those discussions. We don't talk about our feelings a lot, but I know, I personally went through it where I just felt awful that with all my knowledge, with how could I let, you know, this happen, Sugar passed away very quickly from cancer. And while I was given a lot of credit for noticing this little tiny, spot on her back, I still was like, I should have seen it before, that. The reality is things happen, and then we all have our own grieving processes as well. And so that move to, we've got to fill the hole either for ourselves or for somebody else and get them, or there is no replacement, folks. It's just that simple. They're going to be, that's going to be special. That being is going to be special and a unique being, but that's that other part. And the last thing too is parents. One of the other parts of the conversations that have been going on this past month or so is people are, I'll ask, how did you, end up having, instead of the one dog, you've got five dogs. Well, one of my kids, had two dogs and then they moved to something. So I took their two dogs in, and then I couldn't say no to my other child who had, two dogs or a dog and a cat, and it's like, oh, okay. So you are the arc where things are going to be offloaded. You got to have those conversations, and they're tough conversations. I know because I've had to have them. Lot to think about in this process. It is a commitment, and one of the most major commitments we are going to make. The cost, the feelings, the emotions, time, money, all of it. This is a big commitment, and I think it's something that hopefully we will continue to elevate. I'll give you the last word, Lauren.
Making notes for another episode. I, the only thing that I would say that has come up a couple times is the only people that should ever get a pet for someone else is a parent getting it for a child, because the parent ultimately is the one caring for it and making the decisions and knows what fits and all that. And it's a teaching process for the children. Other than that, pet parenting is such an individualized um, emotional commitment that if you want to get somebody a pet, surprise them. Put a stuffed animal, wrap it up, and say, and when they open it and they go, gee, thanks. Well, this dog is to symbolize, let's go get one,
I love it.
and to go together, they'll still be every bit as excited, The process is exciting. Picking out your own kid is everything. The connection, I know for my little diva princess, when when we got her, my husband looked at me and was like, "Really?" And I was like, I was sobbing. I was like, "She's beautiful." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And of course, I could see it, and she just bloomed into this exquisite little diva. But I knew it was there. And he just looked at me like, okay, I don't see it, but you do. It's your kid, so whatever. But it's not a kid he would have picked.
Yeah.
And this is my kid. And I
Yeah.
picked her, and the bond is there. And I saw what he couldn't see. So just make it. There's so many ways you could do that without you bringing in a kid that somebody else is forced to love that maybe isn't the kid they would have picked. And I got to tell you, in my story, I heard that a lot. Well, it's not the dog I would have picked, but we have her now. So, and it's like, oh, I love that you're stepping up to love that kid, but what a bummer that you're missing out on that soulmate connection.
Yeah. Love it. Hey, folks, share your stories with us on practicalpetchat@gmail.com. Send your story, send some photos. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Want to be a part of everything that you're doing as well. Visit us on all the social media channels. Share us with a friend this week, especially someone who might benefit from this kind of conversation. We really appreciate y'all. Thanks for joining us here on Practical Pet Chat.
Bye, guys.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.